right, who is going to give me what's the first problem that they think is the issues of today's youth? A little louder. What is it? Entitlement. Ooh, okay. Entitlement. What else? What else? What else? Peer pressure. I love it. You're the first. Good job. Great job. What else? It's all about me. What else? They know everything. I love this. What else? Religion. What else? Distractions. Anything else? Anything else? Surprised I haven't. Oh, you look like you're about to say something. Home. Yes. I'm surprised there's one that I was. Oh, right back here. What is it? Bullying. Okay, that's another one. Anything else? No loyalty. Okay. Identity. Ooh, gold star for you. I like that answer. All of those answers. Oh, I saw a hand. Safety in schools. That's one of the ones I was looking for. The other one I was thinking many of you would say is the social media. That's what you was about to say. It's the technology. It's changing our children, right? But there's literally eons and eons and eons of things that are pressuring these children today. I call this little session lack overload because everything that you guys have listed is on a spectrum of too much of something or not enough of something, right? There's not enough safety in schools. There's too much hostility, right? So there's a lack of resources, a lack of guidance. There's a lack of that security, that love, positive influence, healthcare, security, stability. I had told me a couple days ago that bullets are the new bullies in schools. And I almost thought, because that is literally my life's work, is working with youth. And when I was growing up, it was all about anti-bullying, right? When's the last time you heard about bullying? That's not even in the news, right? That's not even on the forefront of many people's minds. And so there's a lack of some of these basic things that our children are needing. But on the opposite spectrum, on the opposite end, there's too much. There's too much information. There's too many influences, distractions, I think say, that our youth are getting swayed into. There's too much peer pressure, bullying, right? It's like our children have a buffet of information, but they don't have the dietitian to tell them what to eat. Please forgive me, I speak in metaphor if that's okay with y'all. Right? There's a flood of information, but they don't have the floaties to help them guide the waters, right? And so that leads our youth to fall into this gap, this hole. That's what this represents. In that gap, you'll find children that have difficulties navigating reality and what's real and what's not. You'll see risk-taking. This generation, where are we at? Gen Z, statistics are calling them the lonely, pragmatic generation. Because of the digital world that they're in and the unstableness of their life in these last few years, that's where they're finding themselves. They need to see proof. You need to show me the real. But then they're also having trouble trusting things because nothing is real, right? So you're showing that though this is the most educated generation, right? Over years and years, it shows that our children and our youth are getting more and more educated. They're more progressive, they're more diverse. I think the statistic is something for Gen Z right now is 52% white, 25 Hispanic, 14 Black, and like 5 Asian, I think is the statistics right now, right? So we see all these other great things that could be just so much potential in our youth, but because of these pressures, they're not reaching that. They're falling into this gap, this hole. So what can we do about that? Now, this looks like a lot. I'm gonna send this over to you, Mr. Kennebrew, so you can go ahead and print this off for everybody so you can read this on your own. But this is where I do my level setting, right? So in my world, my point of view, and I'm sure I share this with many of you, I want our youth to be whole, right? I want our youth to come from a excelling point of view, both mentally, physically, and spiritually. Now, Minister Kennebrew mentioned earlier that there's nothing new under the sun. Everything came from the church. It's like he read my presentation. So that's the kind of framing I want y'all to think. Body, mind, spirit. Now, this bottom pyramid, Maslow's Hierarchy of Needs, raise your hands if you heard of this, you've seen this. Yes, this is nothing new, right? The idea that if our physiological needs aren't taken care of, you can miss me with everything else, right? So we talked about safety and homelessness. Our children can't focus in the schools if they're not eating, right? So that is number one. That is the natural needs. As long as our basic survival needs are met, any human will be motivated to reach those higher other psychological needs. Now, unfortunately, many of our children have been in survival mode, so they're not even reaching up to the top of the pyramid. Now, that's, like I said, the natural. The mind. I come from a world of positive psychology. I come from the world of mental health, especially working with veterans. It's a hot button topic. It is also very important for our youth. Because imagine, I'm sure y'all have all heard and seen some commercials, something telling you, take care of yourself. Self-care is key. Who is telling that to the youth, right? They're living in the same trauma that we are. And so positive psychology is the science of optimal human functioning, which is essentially the study of happiness. Like it's a study of well-being. Anyone familiar with positive psychology? Well, okay. Well, good. This is a good teaching class. All right. So the basics is in PERMA-V. It's an acronym. PERMA-V. P, positive emotion. Happiness, right? You're just optimistic about the world. E, engagement. You find stuff fun and you want to do it because you're good at it. R, relationships. M, meaning. A, accomplishment. V, vitality. What does all that mean? Positive psychology is positive emotions rather, is talking about, like I said, whatsoever is pure, whatsoever is lovely, whatsoever is good. You know, that very famous, my favorite scripture, Philippians 4:8. So engaging, that's what I like to look at as the fruits of the spirit. I list them on the side that needs a refresher. Our relationships, every is based on relationships. If you can't make a relationship with the youth, how are you expected to, right? So Hebrews 10:24-25, let us not forsake the gathering of ourselves. Like it's in the word, we have to come together and build relationships, right? M, meaning. Jeremiah 29:11, one of my other favorites. For I know the thoughts I have towards you, right? That's where that's where we focus on, right? We focus on that meaning, but what about the other parts of positive faith? Bless you. What about those other sides of positive psychology? Accomplishment. We have to give something our children to strive for. Something that they can check off the box. And who here keeps lists? Y'all keep lists? Who does it feel good to cross it off? Praise God. Right? So our children have to have something to strive for as well. When David captured and killed Goliath, they cheered. They accomplishment there. Vitality is talking about the physical, how you're sleeping, how you're eating, how you're addressing stress, right? So if we don't give our kids the tools to do those things, how do we expect them to be whole? Now, the spirit side of things, mind, the body, the spirit, the fruits of the spirit, these are the results. When we take care of these other things, the natural inclination of children is to show love. The natural inclination of children is to be patient and to be kind, right? Have you ever talked to a hungry 4-year-old? They are not nice. I babysit, right? So you want to make sure that the foundation of our children churches, fruits of the spirit, the values that we hold close, is taught and shown both through you and their surrounding areas. Now, as I wrap up, well, not wrap up, the tool I'm going to leave y'all with is an acronym called CHURCH. Now, I was also tasked to talk about what can the church do inside the church with the children and then the children outside. I look at it as all the same. Because if we're doing our job effectively and correctly, then we're always going to be bringing in new children, right? Because if you are also not bringing in new children or you're treating children differently, they're going to spot that. They're going to spot that because they recognize real or they're looking for real. And if you're treating children one way in the church and one way out of the church, they're not going to receive that. So, C, communication. You cannot help children or you cannot work with children if you don't talk to children. Communication, openness and transparency is needed to build trust. Like I said, look for something real. And it has to be different. There has to be different channels of communication. So those of you that are like, oh my God, technology. Guess what? That's where the children are. That's where they are, right? So your practical point, something you can do, who's familiar with QR codes? You can link a QR code with anything and everything. You want to hear from the children, get a survey going? Boom, QR code. You want them to watch a video? Boom, QR code. We all use them. We use them at the restaurants. We use them on the streets. We all used it on the Super Bowl when it came and bounced up on the screen. Y'all know what I'm talking about? That commercial? It was there. I know y'all used it. Don't play with me. C, H, humility. Humility. So if you're communicating with the children, you want to make sure you stay humble because everyone was a teen. I know I was a mess at 15. And we all have that one person at our job, at our school, in the community that thinks they know everything. Do you want to go and talk to them? Never. You don't want to. Same thing in the church, same thing in the ministry. You want to remain humble because that's what draws people in, right? And so we know that wisdom comes with time, experience, asking. What is that? James 1:5. Ask for wisdom and he'll give it. Our children don't know to ask for it yet. So they need the time and the experience. So don't judge them for not having that time and experience. You, understanding. A common ground of respect and perspective is key for fostering understanding. So the practical point for humility is ask or listen more than you speak. For humility, listen more than you speak. You have 2 ears and 1 mouth, and y'all know the rest of the saying. Understanding, like I said, you want to build that common ground of respect and perspective. You can't know a point of view if you don't, or the point, can't have an understanding of their point of view if you don't talk and listen to them. So your practical point there for understanding is ask questions. I know there's a gap often talked about with youth. So you want to make sure you're asking questions to help bridge that gap. R, reach out. Now this one seems easy. It seems obvious. Reaching out is more than just, hey, sweetie, that shirt don't look good on you today. Y'all laugh. I have heard it and seen it in the church. Like, hey, sweetie, that dress is too tight. It's more than that. And I have a funny story because I just talked to my grandmother last night because I was going over my notes. And she was talking to me about what she does when she reaches out. It's more than just seeing something and saying something. It's how are you helping them cover that gap? So my grandmother, a young lady in the church, brand new to the church. She has a 12-year-old. She's a young woman, and she's a little heavier. Some of the clothes weren't fitting right. I heard someone talking about that earlier. It don't look good. You just like, ugh, I should say something so she feels, more comfortable so people ain't looking at her. So my grandmother goes up to her, hey, sweetie, I think your dress is a little tight. You might want to pass that down to your daughter. In fact, here's your practical point. I have other clothes for you that you may be able to fit. Right? We always talk about come as you are, but how do we make sure that what they have is what's going to be working for them? We got to fill that gap when we reach out. C, community. We have to set the atmosphere for youth dialogue. We want to make sure that everyone has that same mission. You go into a kindergarten classroom, you're not going to see super high tables sitting in a row. You're going to see them in their cute little circle cubbies, right? If you go to a college class, you're going to see the desks sit in a U to be able to talk across each other, right? Have a dialogue. You have to set the atmosphere for the age group you're working with so they can have that same foundation. Because once you communicate and you come to them humbly and you have some mutual understanding, you naturally gravitate towards having people around you and you build that community up. That community to be in the church, in the ministry holistically. In fact, I've had some of the best Bible studies at my kitchen table with my friends, right? So that's your practical point. Host a mini Bible session, bring on some food and some potluck. I know it's hot. You can do a barbecue with it and get something together at the house. Doesn't have to be a lot, right? Keep it simple. H, healing. Healing. This one, if you do all of these steps and you're still having trouble finding youth and you're still having trouble connecting to youth, it's because some healing has to happen. The only way to reach youth is by reaching their parents too. And there's a whole generation of parents that have left the church. My generation specifically. I'm a millennial, don't judge me. Now, obviously, if the children are of teenage age and they have some agency, you can reach out to them directly. But if you're trying to grab the middle school age kids right at that critical, pivotal point where they're trying to make those life decisions or it's a pivotal point in their education system at middle school, you're going to have to bring the parents along too. And that whole generation of parents that have left, there's some sort of misunderstanding or pain that needs healing. So your practical point here, darlings, are to find someone you need to apologize to, because we all have one. We all have one. Now, church, I said communication, humility, understanding, reaching out, community, healing. Lastly, my key takeaways, love. It doesn't have to be perfect. It doesn't have to be this picture perfect thing when you're trying to do ministry. It just needs to be real and it needs to be filled with love. So my goal, my organization's goal, both Purple Spark and the Travis Manion Foundation, is youth the resources, the knowledge, the tools to figure out what to do when they can't find the answers. I think that's everyone's belief. When we're talking about youth, especially this generation, they're expecting instant results. They're expecting instant microwave things. And if they can't find the answers, what happens next? They fall into that gap. They fall into that hole. And so we want to make sure that our ministries are based on love so we can help fill that gap. My key takeaways, like I mentioned, relationships are vital. You can't do anything that I talked about today if you don't have a relationship with some youth. 2, it starts with you. Of course, there's going to be those outliers of youth that reach out and you to mentor me. I think you're a great person. Can you help me navigate this? But that's not reasonable for youth sometimes. You need to go and be that first step. It starts with you. 3, wellness, wholeness, thriving, positive psychology. It's all the same language. It all comes from one source, the Bible, right? We talked about that. It's all there. So when you're talking to youth, when you're talking to program leaders or community leaders, making sure you're coming in with the idea of how can we all become whole and thrive. 4, change takes time. Change takes time. Many of the factors that y'all listed at the very beginning were in motion before COVID. Homelessness was an issue before COVID. Homelessness is a decades-long issue. School safety is a decade. Gun safety is a century-long issue. So in order to address these, we have to give ourselves some grace and time and understanding that it's not going to happen overnight, right? So that is my time, I hope. I hope I didn't go over. And last but not least, don't forget church. That's your other acronym. If you have any questions, I'll stick around a little while to answer any questions.